Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast. This week, I'm speaking to filmmaker Jessica Boss. Hi, Jessica, thanks for joining me. So, I've got on your IMDb page actor, director, producer, and you've got a film that's out at the moment called Unnamed. So, let's start there. Tell me a bit about that feature film.
It was so great to have it finally out because it was a long time coming to get it off the road. And it premiered at the Dances with Films Festival back in 2024. And then we got distribution in 2025, like May 2025. So super excited about it. It was a passion project of mine to raise awareness of human trafficking, pretty much about a Nigerian hairstylist who gets promised this once in a lifetime opportunity to go study abroad and work on movie stars' hair in Los Angeles. Then she gets trafficked. That's pretty much where the story starts. Yeah, I'm really proud of the work.
Yeah, no, it looks great. So, were you originally start out as an actor that then moved into directing? Is that the sort of path your career took?
Yeah, somewhat. So I actually went to film school at University of Texas at Austin, hook 'em horns. Um, I studied there and I was taking acting classes at the same time. And then I pretty much just thought, okay, I think I'm gonna move to LA and just pursue acting because I didn't think I was good enough to direct. I think in my directing program, I was one of three females, and I was very like, oh, I don't think I can do this. I think I'm intimidated by this. And so I just chose acting, and I love performing. And so I was like, let's go that direction. And I was acting in Los Angeles for so many years. I mean, I'm still here in LA, but acting for so long. And then I started to kind of catch the bug again, like, maybe there's more storytelling inside of me. And that's kind of where making films started to kind of happen.
Right. Okay. So if we stick with Unnamed at the moment, so talk me through it from the beginning. So what sort of budget level is it at?
So this was shoestring budget. This was
Shoestring
like,
budget. Okay, that's all I need to
yeah.
know. You don't need to give me a figure. Yeah, shoestring budget is no, that's fine because I always advise filmmakers don't reveal your budget to the wrong people. So I'm happy for you not to reveal it, but shoestring budget, micro budget, we know where we are with that.
Yeah.
So how did you fund that? Was that self-funded or were you crowdfunding? How did you get the money to make the film?
So initially, I was trying to get somewhere between $500,000 to about $1 million to make this. And that's kind of the direction I was going in. I actually wasn't on board to direct. I wasn't on board to produce. I was just going to act in it. And then through a series of different, I guess, occurrences, the director who was on board ended up getting really busy with TV, like network TV, like legit TV jobs. So she kind of had to say peace. And I don't blame her. And then another producer friend was supposed to just be producing on it, and she was having trouble finding finances. So then it just kind of happened like I was praying one day and I heard, now is the time to make your film. So I was like, okay, I think then that's the message that I need to like, let's move on this. So I basically started with whatever money I had in my savings. And I think it was like about 10 to 12K. And I was like, okay, if I act in this and I direct this, I don't have to pay anybody to do it. So that was my thought process. Like, okay, I can get this far. I can produce and somehow get my husband to produce with me, which he graciously did and came on board and supported. And then it just kind of started to like do this whole, what's that, like snowball effect where I was talking to people and they were like, oh, like a friend of mine was like, oh, I was like, do you know anybody who might like want to invest in or contribute to a low budget film? And she was like, well, I have money for you. So my friend gave me a few $1,000s, and then talking to people, they came on board. My husband's father gave some money. So it was just like a village came together and just kind of started to help contribute to this project. And boy, it was quite a community effort, and it got done. So that was kind of just how it happened.
Yeah. And it's interesting. That's for me, again, they always say don't use your own money. But sometimes, if it's a project, especially it sounds like it's a passion project for you, sometimes you just got to get the ball rolling and you've just got to start it. And if you don't do that, it will never happen. So you've done the right thing there, and you've got it off the ground. And it only takes one person to believe in something, and then everyone else starts to kind of think, oh, actually, this thing could happen. Um, so
Yeah.
funded it yourself. What's it like being a female director? I'm a male director. I don't know. And and are there any sort of hidden hurdles there? Do you think you talked about maybe not having the confidence at film school? What are kind of some of the challenges you faced?
Well, I mean, I realized that it's kind of it's a fine line. I think like one has to really know how to work with other people and talk to other people. And I didn't find that people didn't respect me on my film. I thought people did, you know. I think that it's just a matter of, I guess, like sometimes as women, we might feel like if I'm being too direct, I could be taken as bitchy. And I think, though, what I'm noticing about the people around me in my community, the men don't really treat us like, oh, it's just a female director. I think that they start seeing it as we're all creatives and we're collaborating. And I think a lot of, yeah, I don't think I had any issues regarding me being a female compared to maybe if a male would have directed. I don't think that I had anything like that. Um, I do think, though, as a first time director, I think getting my feet wet with knowing how to balance everything well, I had to kind of really know how to finesse how I speak to people and not just talk to people one way, but like really relate to each person as the unique individual. So I think that maybe that lack of confidence came at school. I was also in film school. I was, in my teens. So I was very new to
Mm.
filmmaking. I didn't know anything about it. I just got a vision one day. I need to go to film school. And so I changed from pre-med to film, and my parents were pissed, but,
I bet.
but, gotta follow the intuition. But yeah, I think ultimately the people I put around me were just really amazing people that I could not have done this without. Every single person brought their A game to this project, and yeah, it was such a great experience. I mean, hard, very
Yeah,
hard.
I bet.
Producing while also directing and acting, I'll never do that again. I think
Hmm.
that's one of the things that I my brain was just like an overdrive, and I was like never again. But yeah, I really had good creative people around me, and that's important.
Yeah, and you mentioned there acting, directing, and producing. That's insane to me. But not only that, what you're doing as well is doing a subject matter that's kind of quite serious, and you've obviously not only got to direct it well, but you've got to deliver a performance in the lead role to get people to connect to it. So what's the challenges of taking on such a big subject?
I think getting all of the emotion, like really having to get the emotions down, and not judging myself. I think as an actor, when I'm acting in other people's stuff, I'm usually very pleasing, like, oh, I hope I did that correctly. And I'm like, oh, I hope they're happy, and I want
Yeah.
to, there's that part of me that wants to almost like people please and do more. And this time, I didn't have that time to ruminate on my performance or to judge it or to go, was that good enough? I had to literally do 1 to 2 takes max and always shoot my coverage first and then turn it around so that I could be very present for my talent. And I think it was probably one of the times I noticed that I wasn't I wasn't doing that like, am I good enough talk. I just was like, this has to get done because I have 8 hours for this location. I'm behind 1 hour. I have like, sometimes I'm in the like wardrobe or makeup chair and they're doing my hair while I'm trying to set up the next shot and talking to everybody and feeling fires left and right. So I just didn't have time to judge myself in that regard. And there are moments I wish I would have done better as an actor and as a director, but ultimately I think for all of it, I'm really happy with how it all turned out. Like it could have been better, but I think that's always the case. Is what we always think. I wish I had more time for this, or I wish I wouldn't have wasted time shooting that I cut out of the movie anyways, because then I could have blah blah blah. But it's all learned lessons. So that's the one thing I take away is what do I learn from this experience? And I learned don't produce. I'm going to direct and act at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. In a sense, my version of that is I try when we get to the bit where we film it. I'm fortunate that my wife's my producer, but when we get to the filming part, I have to kind of try to separate that producer side of me away because it's like you say with the acting as well. It's all these conflicting things going on, and it is nice to have that clarity.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was. So you're acting, you're directing your first feature film. What do you, having done it all and now it's been released, what do you wish you'd known when you started that process?
I feel like I wish I would have known more about how the world of post works. I think um, I've edited before, so I just knew I didn't want to edit this one. I was like, I need to be away from it for a little bit after filming. But this was the first time, honestly, that I worked with a composer, and I didn't know anything about how to choose, or I should say, not anything. I should say, I thought I should pick somebody who knows how to do beautiful music. And I realized that composing is more than just beautiful music. It's telling a story with the music and really knowing, like getting someone who knows how to tell the story with music. I think that's something I wish I would have known before. But now I know for the next one.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's interesting because it is an element you can sort of forget about it sometimes because oftentimes, like with the films I've made, music's sort of the last thing that goes on
Hmm.
because you're getting all your sound elements in. But just as in the same way that sound can tell a story, that music can be so useful. Maybe even when you hold back the music, so useful to help your story. One of the other things I was going to say, picking up on what you said earlier about looking at your film and the things you didn't shoot and the things you wish you'd spent more time on, all that kind of stuff. Recently, we got a film back from 10 years ago we made, and that gap of 10 years has really enabled me to watch it and love it and not look at those mistakes or those things. So I reckon give it some time and you'll look at it and you'll forget all those days where you shot stuff. I know what you mean, where you shoot a whole scene and then it just ends up in the bin and you just wonder, why on earth did I even film that? It doesn't help the story. So that'll fade.
Well,
So
that's
talk to me.
encouraging.
Yeah, it will. It fades. It
That's
all
so
fades.
encouraging.
Takes a while, 10 years,
Yeah.
but it'll fade. So, what was the hardest day on set of that movie for you?
Oh, I don't wanted to say every day, but that's not
Every day, yeah, I
true.
bet.
Um, I think one of the hardest days was just we had a company move, and it was actually leading up to that day. So the day before, I had booked two different locations. I had to make it look like Nigeria on the inside and then Nigeria on the outside. And in LA, there's no location that incorporates both, at least not from what I've scoured on the internet. So I found two places, booked them both, and didn't hear back from one of them. But I saw that there was a charge on my card. So I was like, okay, it went through. But then I still didn't hear back. Like later in the evening, I got my props and everything. And then I called the person to see, like, hey, just wanted to make sure everything's good to go. They forgot to book out the location. So he's like, I'm not free, I'm not available. And I was begging. I was like, please, like, can we just need the outside? No. Please just have a friend come. No. Like, he was not letting me, no matter how much I like pleaded. So it became clear that we had to find another place. And this was around like probably 9 p.m. and we were supposed to shoot at like 8 a.m. the next day. And my husband had been scouring all the internet sites and looking for a place. And the one we booked was the best option and probably one of the only options we thought. So we were like, what do we do? We have no way of like finding a place, And then we found a place, but they were wanting like an 8-hour like minimum. And this was specific. We only needed 4. We only had the budget for 4. So somehow we called and they kindly and graciously said, yeah, we'll give it to you for the 4 hours. And so that was all working out. And I was like, okay, so we were good to go. And then the day of set, a different fire pops up, cast member maybe won't be able to make it. So there's just all these things. And I'm like, we've already confirmed like everybody and the locations now are set. And it was just one of those like, okay, stay calm. And then it all worked out in the end. And, but it was very tough. Just making sure all the fires don't, erupt and completely burn the whole set down, which I thought would happen a couple of times.
Yeah, it's funny. Location is, I think for me, it is linked to a lot of the most stressful things when things go wrong are linked to location, because it's kind of like the ultimate thing that can stop you shooting. Whereas, like you say, if someone doesn't turn up, I do the other side of the room, or I can change the scene I'm filming. If you've not got someone to film, that's horrendous. So yeah, that does give me nightmares. What I love with producing Wife is if, say, we're filming and I can see in the corner of my eye, say maybe the person responsible for the location is talking to my wife, and afterwards I'll be like, everything okay? She's like, yeah, all fine. That's what I want to hear. Yeah, it's all fine. And then later that night she'll go, oh yeah, we nearly got chucked out, or whatever it is, but it's been dealt with and I don't have to panic about it.
Oh, that's so great. I'm glad you and your wife have that same dynamic, like the film couple, it's a good compliment.
There's a lot of us around, isn't there, who you work with your partner, because they're, for me anyway, the person who's going to most have your back in any situation. So on a film set, it's nice to have that kind of, secret language between you both, and know that they're going to always be looking out for you and to get the film finished.
That's 100.
Yeah. So you finished the film. I'm right in saying you went with Indie Rights, is that right? For your
I did, yes.
Sort of sales agent. So did you so I've got a film with Indie Rights as well, The Apocalypse Box.
Yes.
So we're both with Indie Rights. Did you consider any other avenues for distribution, or were those the people you zeroed in on straight away?
Did have a few distribution meetings. Because of Dances with Films, there were a couple of distributors who were already there, so they came and saw the film, and then they wanted to talk to afterward. I set up the meeting, or we set up meetings, and then we talked and heard what they had to say. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of made sense. Indie Rights, they did my husband's film, his first feature, and they were great. I realize I'm pointing. He's behind me. Sometimes you can see his legs right there. Yep. Hubby's legs.
Nice.
I'm trying to cover him. But yeah, so they did well with that one. I mean, we made the money back with his, plus in profit now, so that was great. Very transparent. They didn't take any money or upfront or do any weird fees that that you're like, or have these long dense contracts that you're like, I just feel like I'm signing my life away and I don't know what it means and I don't have money anymore for a lawyer. but then I thought, yeah, I mean, Indie Rights, I think they'll be the right people to steward this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you what are your tips, or how have you handled promoting your film? How are you sort of, because obviously with indie rights, you're not with a conventional distributor, so you're sort of responsible for your own promotion and getting people to watch it. So what are your tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, Indie Rights doesn't do any of the promotions, but they do have their Instagram. So anytime you post anything, if you tag them, they'll repost things. And they have a big network of filmmakers and other people. So that is actually helpful, I found. But I just did it myself on social media, mainly Instagram, some Facebook. I think I even did a Facebook ad, if I'm not mistaken, for when the movie was either coming out or we were about to premiere. I can't remember when, but um, and then I just word of mouth it. Honestly, I talked to my friends, I talked to family. We had a really big cast, so I mean, most of them were on maybe for a day or two, but or mainly a day, some of them, but it was a big cast. So I just would keep them posted and tell them to share it with their friends and family. And then I also joined some Tubi groups, which was really fun. First, I was doing a lot of these like tagging Tubi with the film, and then they sent me something like, "Oh, you're some sort of super fan." I didn't know what that meant, to be honest, but I was like, "Great." And then they referred me to some like Tubi groups, and I'd never heard of this, and I was like, oh, okay. So I joined Tubi groups and share about the film there, and yeah, just wherever I am, I'm always talking about the film. Not in a way like where I'm just like waiting to like just tell somebody about the film, but
Yeah.
in natural conversation, of course. Like, and for me personally, if I ever meet filmmakers, like, because I go to film mixers throughout LA, I always ask them about them first, and I always watch their stuff first before I even share my stuff with them. So I try to be more of that like giver first, and not just like here's what I have and like watch my film, and coming into people's mailboxes just like film. I try to make it a
Mm.
little bit more interactive and yeah, not so salesy.
Yeah, that's a good bit of advice there, especially if you're a bit, because obviously you've got your acting background, which probably gives you a bit more confidence in those situations. But I know a lot of filmmakers in networking environments, it is difficult, and you do sometimes feel, oh, I need to tell people about what I'm doing and I need to talk about this project, and that's how I network. But really, like you've identified there, the best way is to ask people questions, listen to what they're doing, and kind of talk about your stuff when it feels natural, not when you're sort of foisting it upon them.
Yeah.
So for another filmmaker who's just about to start their directorial debut, their first feature film, what's your advice for them?
I would say, um, I think it's always. You mean have they written the script yet, or are they trying to shoot, or?
I'll tell you what, let's do the two stages. So first of all, they're about to write the script. What's your advice for them?
I would definitely write with locations in mind. My first film that I wrote was not. It's much bigger. Like I've written I think like 4 features. This is the one I shot is the feature number 3 that I wrote. The first 2 are like ridiculous, like the location. Like the budget doesn't like they're bigger projects. And this one actually had a lot of locations, unnamed. It was a miracle. But it did have a lot of locations. I think the difference though is I found how to like consolidate locations so that I'm not just shooting at so many different places. Like some of the locations we shot 2 or 3 other scenes, maybe even 4 at the same thing in different, capacities. But I think locations are important. I think sometimes it's a tendency to want to write that like really big, like $50 million project, and I'm not even mad at it. I think if you have the resources and the connections, you might not, like, if you've got that stuff, you might be able to do that bigger budget projects, but most people start off doing independent features, and I think most people start off doing things that are closer to their heart, things that they've experienced, or things that don't require you to have to do so many different location moves and that sort of thing. So I think if you're going to write the script, write with something like that in mind. I think it's always better. Human trafficking, thank God, is not my experience, and this was something I felt like I needed to share at this time for whatever reason, and I found healing from it too. And I hope it heals other people. But the first feature I wrote was actually from my own experience, being a former track runner. But yeah, that was a way bigger project, budget wise. But yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, that's good tip there, right? Right to location is a really good tip because, like you say, you don't want to. I've done it myself. The first solo film I directed had castles in it, and do you know what I mean? All this medieval scenes, scenes in Victorian times. I mean, it took me 7 years. We did it, but God, if I'd have thought about it in advance, I'd have gone, no, it's all in one location. You know what I mean? I'll save myself that stress.
I bet it looks awesome though, like with all the
Yeah, it
castles
does.
in
That's
England.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. That's the one I look back now on, the 10-year-old one. I look back, I'm like, wow, I can't believe we achieved that. Yeah, it was a lot of stress. Locations can be, and the problem with that, as I said, maybe it took 4 years to make, but the problem is you're waiting to try and find those places because they're not places that exist in the real world. Whereas if you write to something that everyone's got a garage, everyone's got a kitchen, I can write those scenes in real places, you've got a much better chance of getting your film made quicker. What about, so that's first filmmaker advice when they're writing their script. What about if they're about to start shooting?
I think preparation is so important. As much prep as you can do. Storyboard, shot lists. Make sure you get it. I know there's some people who and big name people too who say they don't have a shot list. That's cool. Like
How do they
everyone
do
has.
that?
I
How
don't
do they
know.
do it without forgetting to get, oh, I didn't get a close up of that thing? That would be me. I'd be a month later going, oh yeah, there's a gun in this scene and I didn't film it.
Yeah, there's enough to think about, and I
Yeah.
mean, and I'm an actor. I have a great memory, and I can memorize quickly. But there's so much that happens on set that you don't anticipate, and you like it. I don't even know how to describe that period. Like sometimes I'm just like it was a blur, you know. But yeah, I think it's important to do preparation. I think definitely knowing what you want, because I mean, you can wing it. I think I personally think some of those bigger name people who don't do it, it's because this is maybe their 10th, 11th, 12th feature film. And so they kind of have a shorthand, like the more you do something, the easier it gets. But for your very first feature film, just, Studio Binder is awesome. They're not like paying me anything to say this, but I just used them and I loved it, everything about Studio Binder, and it's kept me organized, and I knew what I was doing, and even when I had to make decisions on set, like, okay, we're running out of time if we want to cut this, blah blah blah. So like it kind of helped me to make important decisions on what to do, that I don't think I would have had that flexibility if I didn't even know what I was doing. So, definitely that. And then hire really good people who believe in the project. Um, but don't be afraid to like get contracts. I know it's even with friends, it's kind of a touchy thing sometimes, but like I think from now on I'm just gonna be like contracts. So it protects me and you, um, because there were some instances that kind of flared, and yeah, I mean I did have contracts, but one of the contracts was vague and it was just by a word of mouth. I'll call it a miscommunication, but it
Mm.
wasn't. But yeah, so I think that's always just better to just have that also so you can maintain friendships because it is like film, like it's such a beautiful thing. Everyone's bringing their artistry, but at the same time, you're working with so many different personalities and people do things that you're like, oh, I didn't know this person acts this way on set. Okay, got it. Ugh. So just, I think it's always just good to have.
Yeah, there's both of those great. Yeah, I'm the same. Preparation, have to storyboard everything. Even if I toss them out when I get to set and it all changes, at least I've done that work. And the
Mm-hmm.
contracts, yeah, couldn't agree more. I think having that honest conversation with someone before you start a project and having it written down on paper that you both agreed this is what's happening, just will save you so much ball ache down the line. It will save. Well, it's better to have that little awkward conversation at the beginning when they go, oh, well, what does this mean? This isn't what I want. Get that out of the way. You don't want to be doing that on set at
Mm-hmm.
midnight, when suddenly this problem crops up. So, yeah, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
agree with those. What about post-production? What about first-time filmmaker heading into post-production on a feature?
Okay, so honestly, I thought, hey, filming is over. Now I'm going to coast. Like, that's what I thought. That was not the case. Post was hard in a whole different way. And I didn't know it was this hard. I was like, oh my goodness. I think that was one of the toughest experiences post. Everything always takes a little bit longer. And I think one has to just be patient a lot of the times, Obviously there are times when you have deadlines. You want to get the film out at a certain time, but you can't really you can't really with a bolt like a whip. You can't move. You just have to be patient and try to manage expectations. I think, and just stay calm because I think a lot of the stuff took a lot longer than I thought, and some of the crew thought too. Because it's a lot, and the whole technical aspects of sound. That's I'm just like that's one thing I'm like I don't want to learn. I had to pick up basics. I learned basics and stuff, but I'm like those people like our re-recording mixer is an angel. Like he's amazing. I mean he came on board like he does like legit stuff like SEAL team and things like that. And he started with us on my husband's first film, and he continued with us on the next film and then this film. And I I'm like, man, I feel indebted to him because the sound was, he was phenomenal, and there were other hiccups.
So
Yeah.
I'll end with a question I ask a lot of my guests, which is, have you got a motto? Have you got a mantra you live life and film by? Have you got anything you kind of say to yourself or anything that helps you?
Well, I mean, a lot of the times I'm just like trying to encourage myself. So I might be like, I got this, like, or I can do this, or just do it. I know that cliche Nike, just do it. But I think just kind of those things and like really relying on like prayer and like figuring out where I'm being divinely led. And, I think those are the things that have really helped me personally in all of this world of uh, creative stuff that it's not predictable, but yeah, just encouraging myself.